Khadaura, it was such an honor to meet you last month. We were in a small group setting and I heard little bits and pieces of your story, which I was so fascinated by. And I'm so grateful for you for accepting my invitation to share more details with me. So welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So we were talking a little bit about like mysticism and more like spiritual concepts, and you clarified for me that you were in the military at one point, but you were in touch with those mystic parts of your personality or your life prior to that. So let's just start there, and I would love to hear your story and how that pathway unfolded for you.
Awesome. So yes, that pathway and that journey began when I was about 11 or 12. My parents got a job in Japan, so we moved out there. And the little town I lived in, a lot of weird things were happening, and I could see it and no one else could. And something really big happened about like this doll in a glass case. And I kept saying it was there, and everyone's like, there's no doll in a glass case. And then finally, after about a few months, it showed itself to everyone. And the mystic in the village was like, if he could see that, then he's special. There's something about him. So that's when I started to begin my training at a really young age. But it was one of those things where it's like, people know they're mystics or like witches and monks, but it's not like a mystical community. So it was unique for me growing up, being able to learn these things and then integrated in a normal 3D world, I guess you'd say. So I feel like my journey has been really, really nice because I've had to integrate and merge those worlds at a very young age, where I'm meeting a lot of people that are coming into it more recently. And I think they're struggling a little bit more to adjust to their gifts, their abilities that they're finally owning and tapping into. So yeah, after that, I joined the military. Because I wanted to be a warrior, or a samurai, more to say. And I was told that the samurai that way didn't really exist anymore, so I would have to find my own path. So I found the military, and where I was able to understand the code of Bushido, the different values, in my own way, my own show. And in doing so, it allowed me to become a warrior mystic. And the whole concept is behind a saying that they have in Japan, where a samurai that was working in a garden was talking to a student, and the student was like, you talk about war and you talk about peace and these things, yet you're a samurai. And the samurai responded, yes, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And that's kind of what set the tone for my life.
Okay, so let's back up a bit. So you were saying that so prior to the age of 11 or 12, you didn't have knowledge that there was anything different about you.
No,
Is
I
that
saw
correct?
things. I just never told anyone because I grew up in a Baptist household. So
How did you know that you were seeing things that other people couldn't see?
because I would ask people, like
Okay.
literally, like, hey, do you see that like tiger over there? And people are like, no, they're like, it's your imagination. And I'm like, oh, it's imagination in broad daylight. So
that's fascinating. So for you, it was mostly a visual gift that you were aware of?
it's an energy thing. So I can't necessarily like see the thing, like some people might see each other, but I can feel and sense the energy, which gives me the mental vision of what it looks like. And that's how I've learned to adapt. So they said it might be because my human eyes are really, really bad. Like I have -10 vision. So my brain is able to construct things based off of energy. So I've always been able to sense energy, and it builds the picture in my mind.
Oh, I'm so fascinated that you explained it that way, because something I've actually been thinking and talking about with people a lot lately, and about the whole sensory perception, so, and I'm still understanding these things, and more so how to explain them to other people or to choose the right words so that other people understand what I'm talking about, because I know deep in my body of what energy is and what it means and what it feels like. And so I've been trying to communicate with people that there is so much frequency and vibration around us all the time that is outside of the perception, sensory capabilities of our body. And I give examples like, so we have wavelengths moving through the air, and they do not become audible to us until not only do our ears pick them up, but then our brain actually has to transform them into something that comes in as sound. And the same is true of all our sensory capabilities. And there's limitation to that. So there's much more going around us than the body is actually able to perceive from that consciousness perspective. But what else is the nervous system picking up? And I think that has a lot to do potentially with intuition and extrasensory perception and things like that, that we actually are picking up that information, and whether it becomes something that comes into our conscious or not, that's going to be different for a lot of factors based on, how developed people are with their sensory perceptions, how aware they are, how focused they are, how intentional they are. And if they want to have that expansion of those types of gifts or perceptions, then they can definitely work on those things. And also to take the like the strangeness out of this, that it's just something for some people, because it really is for everybody. And we are using this type of technology or accessing these frequencies or movements in the fields all the time with things that we use on a day-to-day basis that we never question, like what we're doing right now with Wi-Fi technology and radio technology. We are broadcasting information out that we cannot see or perceive, and then there's a receiver that picks it up, and then we can hear it. So like the receiver is the ear and the brain combined, and television works in that same way. And so one of the other things that I've been exploring and thinking a lot about is that when somebody loses a function, and that's been told for years and years, if people like lose their sight or their hearing, there's always says that their other sensory perceptions gets significantly enhanced. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. It's fascinating that you said that you were born with poor eyesight, so you have that. Maybe that's why. Well, I'm assuming that you were born with that.
I was born like that.
Right. So you have that natural development of those other senses because you were born like that. So did you ever have anyone react to you or be like, well, besides like the saying, oh, it's only in your imagination, did you ever feel bad about that, or think that you had to hide your gifts or not say those things to people based on the way that people were responding to you?
Growing up, there were things where I was told like, hey, there's certain things maybe you don't want to share with people because I might scare them. So it's like, if I were to see like somewhat of an evil spirit in a classroom, I'm not going to bring it up in the classroom because that could scare the classroom. So it's like, those are the things I was told, like, just be mindful of, because I learned to kind of allow those spirits to shift out of those spaces and things like that. What you were speaking about earlier is powerful because in Taoist mysticism, they speak of the body, the mind, and the breath. And there's three of each. There's a physical, an energetic, and a spiritual or natural for all three of those. So although my physical body cannot see, my energetic body can see, my spiritual natural body can see. So there's still two levels of me being able to see it. So of those 9, if one of them isn't working, the other 8 will make up for it. And this is why you get situations where even when I was younger, I would not know how to explain it. Like, and I would tell people, I'm like, you can't even see wind, but you know it exists. And they're like, well, I see the wind move things. And it's like, sometimes people feel that like cold chill of someone touching them. And I was like, something touched you. And they're like, no, it's just in my brain. And it's interesting how you were saying, where if it's science, people believe it. But if it's not science, sometimes they're like, oh, it can't exist. So they'll call it weird. And I was in a clubhouse room talking to people about the word. I was like, do you all know what weird means? And I was like, weird is Germanic. It means fate, otherworldly, or not of this earth. That is the actual definition of the word weird. So when people were like, that's weird, they were actually trying to say like, that's part of your fate, or that's not of the earth. That is something divine or of a higher level. So I wanted to be like, yes, embrace being weird, weird is like your gift. Weird is your blessing.
I love that. Yeah, and I am embracing weird more and more and really enjoying that exploration. Um, and I choose not to be negative, and I hope this doesn't come across that way, but some of the things that people think are normal are just not healthy or encouraging or supportive of supporting other human beings, you know. So weird is good. I definitely am into weird. um, so there was something I wanted to say and I kind of lost what I was thinking. Okay, so we were talking about how you did not allow anybody else's perceptions or like hushings, or you know, that's just your imagination to, it sounds like you did not allow that to dampen how that showed up for you, which I think is just fantastic, because there are probably a lot of children, because children are less programmed and trained than adults, that have a lot of special gifts that probably detach from their gifts, that and then just, you know, if somebody brings it back around to them later about that they do have something like that, they do not believe that. And I have also come to believe, as my story has opened up and I have become aware of things that I can do, have done a ton of exploration to really understand what's been going on and what that means. Thank you. I have come to believe that this is something that everyone possesses. And so this is what we are born with. And it's not like a special gift or a special perception or anything like that. It is actually our birthright. And it depends on how your life unfolds, whether or not you get to utilize those things. And there's nothing strange or wrong about. And in fact, as with all of the other things that we were gifted at birth, our amazing physical bodies, it is a gift, and it is meant to be shared, and it is meant to be part of our life experience. And not only as individuals, but from a collective consciousness perspective, and how we show up in the world and how we interact with other people. Okay, so let's go back to your story for a minute. And actually, we are live on Clubhouse right now as well, and David has joined us. And so I want to bring him up on stage for a minute and see if he has some input or questions, and then we'll come back. And I want to pick up with your story at around that 11:12 and take it from there again. So David, welcome to the stage. If you want to hit unmute and share with us whatever you want to contribute or your question, I'm really happy to have you here.
Hey, how are you guys doing? I'm kind of in between work stuff too, so I might be intermittent and jump off here if I get a work call in. But you were saying about that you were raised in the Southern Baptist Church, so I bet your gifting was pretty not well received. I grew up in the evangelical Christian world, and yeah, I even spent 20 years in ministry. So I mean, I'm not trying to shed any bad light on that. It's just I understand how probably less than great setting that would have been for you to be able to like expand and you know, maybe explore your gifts. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was a kid they didn't like because I always asked questions. Because I'd be like, oh, okay, so he turned water into wine, and he made more bread and more fish, and I was like, and people hated this guy, and they're like, yeah, and then I was like, okay, cool. I was like, all right, how's this story? So this guy built this big ship, like a huge ship, and people thought he was still playing around. They're like, yeah. I was like, people just like, no one just builds a ship that big just because. And it's like, and then bringing all the animals on, it's like, so you brought 2 of every animal. They're like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, why not other people? And it was like, why just his family? And they're like, well, that's what, you know, the Bible says. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then the one day where like everything shifted, where I got in a lot of trouble, and they actually moved me to the back where I would control the audio. I was like, so how come there's no chapters written by any women? And that just like ticked them off. And as I learned later, like about the Gospels of Mary and stuff, and I was like, I was curious. I don't understand why God would just talk to men if he created Eve. Like,
Well, that's easy. Because the three major religions of the world are all patriarchal on off of Abraham. You got Islam, you got Judaism, and you've got Christianity, and they all based off the same story. It just splits after that. But yeah, in the Christian world, and this is my beef too, is in the Protestant Bible, there's 66 books, and only one of those is dedicated to a woman. And what's really interesting is her name is Ruth, and she wasn't even a Jewess. She was a Moabite. She was like, she married in from another country, so she was a Gentile. I was like, what? Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot in there. And, when I walked away from that, from religion, and I even run a room on Wednesday mornings. It's called Leaving Religion for Spirituality. And it really is that same line, because it's so, and I don't even consider it the divine masculine. I consider it immature masculine that runs most of those organizations, because it's all about control and suppression. And that's why I said back to your, growing up in that situation with your gifting, yeah, that kind of stuff was expulsion. It's like, you either ignore it, you shut it down, or you call it.
True, definitely true.
It's just one of those things where, hey, I'm going to label it something, but I'm not going to label it God.
Yeah, I definitely learned at a young age that I don't have to convince anyone of anything. That's literally one of my first masters said. He's like, you're not here to prove anything to anyone. He was like, as long as you speak your truth and you're authentic, he's like, that's all that matters. And I've just lived by that, of being like, if you don't believe me, that's cool. I don't have to go down this roller coaster of a million questions, because you've pretty much already made up your mind at some point. So
You both bring up an interesting point too. As I've been sharing the gifts that I've become aware of over the past couple months, a lot of people have asked me, that they are afraid of, if they are open to divine connection and communication, that they will be inviting in something that is less than light and love, something potentially evil or, unhelpful or manipulative. And it took me by surprise at first, just because I hadn't considered that. And I was in such a space of beautiful curiosity and exploration, and having such a good time with it, and feeling just so expansive, and just that it was light and love, that I hadn't considered that myself. And I think it's a very valid question, particularly in the context of what you've both brought up about the teachings of religion and how people have been taught things. And as I started to dive in and understand more about energy and frequency and what that actually means and how it works in the human body, I have come to realize, and many other people that I have heard say as well at this point, that you are only going to connect with what you are aligned with from a vibrational frequency. And so if you are in the intention and in the space of being in love and light and in goodness, and only expanding your gifts for the good of yourself and for others, that is what you are going to connect with and expand upon. And you are not going to be connected with anything that is going to be manipulative or controlling or taking over your body or your mind, or telling you to do unhelpful or evil type of things. So I'm really glad that you both brought that up.
I would. It's interesting in Taoism. I would tell those people never go into Taoism, but in Taoism they do understand that yes, there are evil entities and evil beings that have been around since the beginning of time. So part of our training is with like the purva, like the daggers, to learn to like consecrate like an area, or some people, what is the word they use in Christianity? Exorcisms. So you basically learn like forms of exorcisms. And I was talking to someone and they were like, yeah, and they were like, well, these evil spirits, this, and I was like, question, I said, why were you angry earlier? And they were like, because no one was listening to me. No one ever listens to me. And I said, you went on a rampage, right? They said, yeah. I said, so your physical body rampage, your energetic body rampage, your spiritual body rampage. She's like, yeah, I was pissed. I said, cool. That evil entity probably is going through the same thing. Energetically, no one's listening to it. Spiritually, no one's listening to it. And it doesn't have a physical body. I was like, and you were able to calm down, correct? She's like, yeah. I was like, they can calm down. Just no one ever listens to them. So we learn to talk and be there and be present, basically coaching with evil spirits because they still have things they want to say. So when you hear these stories about like these beings in these homes, and especially in America, that are haunting places, it's like, find out what's going on. Why are they're choosing to stay here for a reason. I've never met a spirit or something that was just here because there's something that it hasn't let go of. Just like we hold on to trauma and shame, from 20, 30 years ago, they're holding on to something. So if you are present with them, which is like the divine feminine, and you hold the container, which is like the divine masculine, you can actually work with these spirits to allow them to also shift their energies. And that takes like a level of like practice. This is me, not me telling anyone to go like, go out there and find them. Like there's training that we do to like be able to build up our own psychic defenses, your biofield and things like that. So you can hold it in that container and things like that.
I love that perspective. And it reminds me too of something that I was listening to recently where they were talking about souls incarnating into a space for the purpose of duality. So if they're the space that they're incarnating and coming into physical form is, heading down a pathway that is only going to result in their own demise over the demise of their planet or whatever it could be, that they come in to interject that to bring awareness so that people have that kind of contrast so that they're not just continuing to move ahead in that destructive pathway. And I found that a really interesting perception as well. And of course, a lot of this is speculation. So, we don't always know that these things are true. And it doesn't really matter in the context of things, because if we're here to be the best version of ourselves and to help other people in whatever way that means, without coercing people or preaching to people or trying to have them see our way or just show up and hold space for people, then I think that's all that really matters, is our own personal intention.
I
So
actually really love that you brought that up. I don't know if you've seen the movie Tenet that recently came out, but there's a part in the movie where they explain something that I learned when I was younger, and I love that it was brought up. So there's a scene where they bring up that we are always talking with the future, and it's to get people to grasp the concept of unconditional time. We live in a world where people are like, live in the present moment, the power of now. Yet when you do that, you're kind of bypassing the past and bypassing what will be. So with unconditional time, there's no conditions, and we accept the fact that we communicate with the future. And somebody's like, how? And they explain in the movie, when you send an email, you're sending an email into the future, because when they respond, that's a future version of themselves, not a present or a past version. And I was like, yes, that's the perfect way to explain it, same way that I learned it. When I send something to someone, I'm communicating with a future version of themselves, not the version that's right now. And that's, I believe, how our spirit works. We're doing these manifestations, communicating with our own spirit, and our spirit is kind of already seen everything that's happening. And like you said, it's integrating or coming into that space to kind of guide us, introducing us to certain people so that we'll be guided a certain way. And that's just my belief in the way I grew up.
And that makes total sense to me within the context of what I've been learning. Those concepts of time and space can be difficult to grasp. And what I was saying in the beginning was I have not necessarily found the words to articulate those type of concepts outside of my understanding of them, but my body knows like time and space are not necessarily linear. And yes, they show up in that way here in our 3D reality on the surface of a round planet, but maybe those laws aren't as concrete as we think they are. So, and they probably don't exist in the same way, or at least science has documented that they do not exist in the same way in other places outside of the atmosphere or different planets or space. Or so really, really interesting concepts to consider from a freedom perspective about unlocking our perceptions that keep us, caged in or limited. Because there's so much expansiveness available. And I really think that we've moved into a time where that has become available to us in a much greater way than it has in a long time. So it's part of why I'm so fascinated and invite, want to have these conversations, because I think they're really, really, they've always been important, but right now I think we are being called to step into something much bigger than what we've been doing from an individual perspective, from a collective perspective. And fixing things that have been broken. And part of that is getting back to our own power and our own gifts and what kind of things that we want and what we can accomplish and how we can help those things moving forward. Because I think that we've, at least personally, I know that I have felt powerless in many things. Like if there's a big world event where there's a lot of tragedy, I feel kind of like frozen because I see all these people suffering and I want to help and I don't know what to do. And so when I learned to like stay in my own lane and stay true to my own gifts and be out there offering and supporting people every day with that, it gave me relief from that type of guilt or unknowingness that I couldn't do anything, because I actually could. And by staying focused and not getting distracted on all the other millions of things that are going on, that's how I felt like I could make the biggest difference. So that's helped me tremendously.
I think it's about the unknown. And it's something I talked about with some people over the weekend. Most of the people I meet, we understand we have this power, yet we don't even realize how powerful we are. So I was like, imagine you're walking down the street and you see a total stranger and you say, "Good morning, how are you doing?" And they go, "Oh, I'm doing really, really good." You've just altered their future by like 3 seconds. And those 3 to 5 seconds have altered the stoplight that they might have missed, them getting into their car 5 seconds later. You actually have more power than you think. And we create ripples like that all the time. And the reason why I brought it up is so that people understand the power of like time and the impact we have. If I told someone today, "I hate you, you're ugly," if that was something that was said to them when they were 5 and they've been carrying it for 30 years, now this could stack onto it and add to another 30 years. That one phrase that I said, "I hate you, you're ugly," literally could shift their whole life. Like that is the power we have with every person we meet. In terms of time itself, I believe that everything's already happened. We just haven't come into alignment with it yet. So it's like, as I go this way, something happens and I go that way and it just keeps splitting. I can never go back in time to change something, but there's still infinite possibilities. I just am aligning with different ones. So it's like this huge grid where every time I commit to something, a whole bunch of other timelines open up of things that have already happened. And I think my spirit's trying to go, hey, go that way this time, because you didn't go that way last time. Oh, you're not listening? I'm going to introduce you to a lane, and a lane's going to get you back on that path. And I believe that's kind of how my spirit guides me.
I love that perspective. And it actually aligns beautifully with what the part of the divine downloads that I was given and how they've shown up for me. And also corresponds with what you've been saying about the different bodies, because they were provided to me as energy spheres around the human body. First one being physical, then emotional, mental, and ethereal or spiritual. And then the 5 rings out that, and it's the same 9 sequence that you mentioned. That's all the time frame of what's on its way in, and it will shift and move up from sphere to sphere and get closer and closer depending on the choices that you make within your own circle of influence on a day-to-day basis or month-to-month basis. So I definitely agree with that. Slightly different, language or twist, but same concepts, I believe. So let's get back a little bit to, 11 or 12, you're in Japan, you're having this experience. You're aware that you have these beautiful gifts. You haven't let society ruin you and teach you that it's wrong and be afraid of yourself. And, but you don't know what to do with them. And so you said that you end up going into the military or some type of a warrior type of training, because that was the only way to get more familiar with your gifts and how to use them.
Yeah. So what it is a lot of people see like the monks that are like praying all day long, and they don't see the warrior monks, because it's like, yes, there's people praying and there's someone protecting that area. So those are like the shaman as well. They're a warrior shaman, but most people never hear about them because they go out and like protect the people that are doing whatever needs to be done. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be a warrior monk, then I need to understand the path of the warrior, which meant I would need to put myself in war essentially. And I joined the military and straight out of training went straight to war. And I was like, got it. I thought I had some time. And it just allowed me to adapt. I was 19 years old the first time I went to Iraq. So it was interesting to be in a space like that and still learn to control what I can control, which was myself, my different bodies, my different minds, my different breaths, and integrate and see the way the world really looks. And at that time, I think one of my pet peeves was that people are always talking about, I have a warrior spirit, I have a warrior spirit. And it's like, you have a warrior spirit, yet how does your physical body and your energetic body react to something? Because most people that I would meet that would say that, if something dangerous happened, they'd be afraid. And I say, well, where's the warrior spirit? Because the warrior spirit to me isn't just jumping around and beating on your chest and yelling and stuff like that. The warrior is something that goes out there and experiences war, even if it's not like, the military, but there's still energetic wars going on and things like that. So I, as a mystic, am very big on experience. That's one thing my master ingrained into me, that there's knowledge, which is knowing, and wisdom is experience. He said, if you want to be a warrior, you have to experience war so that you're not just talking about being a warrior. So I wanted to be like, I can actually say, I am a warrior. I have experienced war from that aspect of like the way this world in its one of its cruelest forms actually is.
I'm a little not confused, but like curious about, I guess it's like butting up against some of what my perception of like war and warrior are, from a just a, come at you, suppress the enemy, take over kind of thing. So if you can clarify it a little bit so I can get my brain on track a little bit more with why that path felt so right to you.
That path felt right to me because I needed to ensure that my body would react to anything that was like war in any shape and form. My body could react to it, not just my spirit, not just my energy, because I am still a physical being. So in a sense, I think I gave an example when I was in South America. Somebody said, what's the difference between you and I? And I said, if somebody came in here right now with a weapon and wanted to kill everyone, we would react differently. You most likely would be scared. I wouldn't be scared because my physical body has been trained, my mind has been trained to prepare for things like this. So for me, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I had a physical warrior body, a body that could naturally react to things and not be afraid when things are chaotic. Part of that mystical journey was leading up to being able to work with chaos, which is the raw, untapped form of energy. And in order to be able to work through chaos, one must understand chaos in its most natural forms, which war is a form of chaos in human form.
Okay, so I think I get it, and correct me if I'm wrong. So like my perception now is someone that would do like the monk pathway where they sit in silence and they're having like mind control over their body and how their body functions kind of thing. That's one pathway of creating that kind of bodily control, and you wanted to be like the warrior pathway is more so that you can be in control of how your body responds no matter what's happening around you. So you don't need to be in a peaceful place and sitting in meditation. You are like embodied as the spiritual mystical being that you are, no matter what is happening around you.
Again, it goes back to being the warrior in a garden versus a gardener in a war.
Right. Okay. Thank you for, yes. Okay. Now I understand. Okay. So you create that physical peace within your body, no matter what's going on around you, but you're not going to show up and just like be ripping the garden apart.
Yeah. But I don't have to show up and be like, everything is what I have control over that inner warrior, which is part of that hard journey, is like being put in that scenario, being pushed to that breaking point and still being able to remain calm. And it's like, even if war was going on around me, I could still sit there and think very clearly and be like, okay, let's try this, let's do this. And I was very calm, and people thought it was crazy. They were like, how are you so calm? The other aspect of it is the world of polarity in this universe of what is good and what is bad. And it's like on that mystical journey, or it was, the example was given in South America. Someone said that what I did was wrong as a soldier or as a warrior, because, you know, what if I had to kill someone? I said, okay, I have a question. I was like, if you and your best friend here, someone came to attack us and they were going to take the life of your friend, would you let your friend's life be taken? Or would you give me the signal to save your friend and take out the person that is bad? And she said, well, of course, I want you to save my friend. I said, so why is it okay now for me to do that bad thing if it benefits you? And she did not know what to say. And I said, yeah, I would be able to do the thing that you think is bad, but I see myself as saving someone. Like, I still have that moral value that I'm not just going to hurt someone because, but in terms of saving a life, I will be able to react differently. So.
I think that's a beautiful distinction, and goes back to what we were talking about before when people ask about going into that divine space and attracting some type of a manipulative or controlling being. It's the same thing with you. Like, you're not going into this to be suppressing people, dominating people, hurting people. You're doing it from a saving perspective, and also from that beautiful space of keeping your body nice and calm and happy no matter what's going on, so that you can be the best version of you. I think I get it. Is that kind of
sums it up? Literally,
awesome?
If the world was in utter chaos, I would still be like, man, I wish I had a churro right now. I love churros. Like, that's just the way my brain thinks. Whereas everyone's like, oh my God, we gotta do something. And I'm like, I want a churro.
Yeah, and how different would the world be if we were actually all in a space where if someone was trying to put us all in chaos, and we'd be like, no, I'm just gonna go chill and hang out by the fire pit and talk to my friends, or, whatever, go for a hike and watch the beautiful birds, or, yeah, that would be life-changing. So tell me a little bit about the past. So, you went into that training for all of the purposes that we've talked about, and where did it take you after that? So
the key to all of that training for me was understanding the Bushido code in terms of the word benevolence, because benevolence is all about having power and knowing when to and when not to use it, and when to show mercy. For me, I didn't understand that concept as much until I was in the military. I was in a position of power where that power was a form of life and death. And I actually understood what, to me, the beauty of life really was when I would see lives be taken, or I would see lives be saved. And then I knew I have a choice to save this life or to not save this life, or to take a life to save my life or someone else's life. And then from there, once I had like really learned and integrated that aspect of myself, I was like, I truly understand power for me now. And I understand what I need to do. And I remember talking to my master, and I came back and I was like, I understand benevolence. And he was like, then you're ready for whatever you get to do next. Next for me was learning to actually translate everything I learned into ways that Westerners can better understand it. which is what I've been doing for the last 10 years. It's just trying to translate everything because there's so much knowledge, but I think a lot of concepts might not be understood. You know, when someone says, oh, you got to align your ki or your chi, some people don't get it. But when you say energy spheres, people are like, ah, that makes sense. I get it. So I've been learning to translate all of my lessons so that I could share them with people.
Right. So it's the trying to unpack that information and use the kind of language that can translate to have meaning for somebody else so that you can be impactful, not only for yourself and all of your experience and lessons learned, but you can help other people with that. I'm so curious of when you were in the military, because your perspective and intentions and energy would be so different, I imagine, from what most soldiers are in. What was that like?
It was interesting because a lot of people I met were like the son of someone that served, of someone that served, of someone that served. And there was like this huge pride of like, I'm serving in the army, I'm protecting my country. And there were moments where I like really tried to embrace that. I was like, yeah, protecting my country. But then there's like stuff that's going on that I'm like, this doesn't feel like we're protecting our country. So I was able to step back and luckily meet other people that were on somewhat spiritual natural paths out there. When I was in Afghanistan, they actually had a coven of witches that would meet, and I would just chill with them. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. They would have their own coven circles, full moon ceremonies, new moon ceremonies, all while in Afghanistan. And they were just very calm and relaxed. So it really helped me definitely meeting them on that deployment.
I love that you said that. And I really want to highlight that point because I think, and I have certainly witnessed this within some of my clients with everything that has transpired over the last 16 months about people's different perceptions and desires around what to do in this, this restricted space that we're living under right now. A lot of people think that they are the odd one out, that they are the only one thinking that they can't share and show up and express what they're concerned about, or even get in a conversation and be like, something feels off to me. Like, I don't know, just to be able to have that conversation. And I get that. And I think I have felt alone for a large part of my life in my own belief systems. And I got into holistic healing before it turned into be a big thing. And I didn't know anybody that was following that pathways. And I was really struggling with my health and I really could have used some support. And so whenever people ask me questions about that now, like I just want to be there and share all of that. And I just want to encourage people to know that you are not alone. And that was a perfect example that you're out in the middle of, you're in a different country, you're not on your home turf, and yet you still found people that you could relate with and communicate with and have a positive experience with. And I have certainly found that over the last 6 to 12 months or so, as I've been, seeing an enhancement or just even recognizing my abilities and exploring the meaning behind that and sharing with people, oftentimes very tentatively initially, because I was, unsure of people's reactions and also not fully versed in how to articulate that. And I have just made more new friends and feel a stronger sense of community than I ever have before. So thank you. And yeah, so I just want to put that out there and encourage for anyone that's feeling alone or that they're the only one that is thinking or doing those things, that is just not true. And if you start showing up and being yourself, you will find those people. And I also encourage people to be careful about who they share things with. Just because some people can be really domineering, opinionated, lack of, I'm not sure. And some people take that to heart. Like I took that to heart. That was why one of the things I was asking you about when people were saying when you were young, I'm so grateful that you did not lose your gifts because of somebody else's opinions. I've done a lot of that over the course of my life. So now I'm much more careful And again, I'll go into a conversation very tentatively, like dipping my toe in the water, and will only start to share more deeply once I get that like green light, that energetic sense, like, oh no, they're not judging me. They totally get this and they're contributing and they want to hear this and they want to share their own stories. So it's been a beautiful journey in that way. And that includes meeting you as well. So that's been part of my journey.
And I'll be brutally honest, there were probably 2 times in my life where I really just wanted to shut it all off and just live a normal life. Once was because of my ex-fiance in 2008. I explained to her a few of the things I could do. And when she was able to see these things with her own eyes, it just completely freaked her out and she bailed out. One of them was I was by a tree and I was showing her about like how trees have a heartbeat and how to connect to the different elements. And I was like, just put your hand on the tree, feel the tree, and be present in this moment. And all of the wind around us started to like move around. And she could see that none of the other trees were moving in it. She's just like, this is crazy. This shouldn't be possible. And I'm like, this is normal. So with that being said, because you were speaking about anyone that has these gifts, I believe one of the barriers that I see the most is that a lot of people are putting spirituality on this pedestal and they believe I'm the only one, no one will understand. So they cap themselves. And when you do that, you kind of limit the universe or God or whomever you believe in from being able to introduce you to more people. And when I met you all, that's why I said I don't really use the word spiritual. I use the word natural. I was like, 2 alpine trees talk to each other? Natural. If I talk to a tree, it's now spiritual. I'm like, it's still natural. It's just like something that happens. So I believe that when we are ourselves, when we allow ourselves to express who we are in our most natural form, we start to actually draw those people in. I think one of the other things to be mindful is, and as you said, to be mindful of who you share with, not just because of them, you know, in their opinion, but also people using you. I've met a lot of people where they have very beautiful gifts and they will go to the person that shows them the love that's very manipulative and they will use those gifts and that person will use them and abuse them. So be mindful of how you share your energy. And the way that I've learned to be more protective is to just trust your intuition. Your intuition, my intuition, I believe our intuition never lies to us. We just don't know when that thing is going to happen. So if my intuition's like, oh, it's a weird feeling about this group of people, it could be 4 years from now where I'm like, oh, these people are terrible. Like, oh, wow, now I get what was going on. So to me, I'm in complete surrender to my intuition of I'm around someone, I feel a weird vibe, I just stay away from them. And that's perfectly fine. I have no idea why I'm doing it. I'm just trusting that process. And a lot of times when I do that, I'll hear from other people like, oh, this person turned out to be a total asshole. And I'm like, oh, that's why. I was like,
Right. Yep. You didn't know what it was, but you knew something was there. Yeah, I agree with that. And I've heard a lot of people say, particularly women in relationships, you know, they'll have invested years of their lives and have given their heart to it. And then when it's over, they'll be like, yep, I remember now back when I met that person, my intuition was screaming at me and I chose not to listen. And I also think that I just want to point out that I think intuition is one of those things that we opened with, in that just that body interpretation of energy, frequencies, vibration that are around us that doesn't necessarily register as a clear conscious type of thought or direction, but it's definitely decoding information, and you know, whether that's good or bad or otherwise, that you should absolutely listen to, because that it's really, really important.
yeah, it goes hand in hand with instinct. I was trying to explain to some people because they were like, well, how do I get to know my intuition better? I said, you've got to also know your instinct. I was like, your intuition is the higher knowing. Your instinct is what's encoded, which you can rewire and reprogram. I was like, if you can reprogram your instinct to how you react to things, also like being the warrior mystic and going to war, my instincts have been transformed. So now I have my instinct and I have my intuition working together, as opposed to, is this intuition or is it fear? I know it's not fear because I know that fear is my ego's natural self-defense mechanism to anything that feels uncomfortable. and my instinct will go, that's crazy, and it's not that weird. And my intuition goes, let's do it, and I go with it. So being able to align your instinct and intuition really, really helps hone into your gifts or whatever you're doing going forward.
I agree. And for clarity's sake, because you have that skill honed, when people are just starting out and they don't understand, is this instinct? Is this something that my nervous system is automatically responding to? Is this intuition? It gets confusing. Start practicing with like simple things like, what do I want to have for dinner today? Or how am I going to spend my weekend? And build up your confidence with things that, aren't life altering, that are simple things. So if you make a mistake, it's not going to be a big deal. And as you develop your confidence, then start trusting it more. Like when you go into a group, like you said, if the group doesn't feel right, check in with yourself. Is this because I'm afraid, or is this because there's a weird vibe here and it's not going to pan out? And then, make a decision and see how it pans out. So practice.
And commit to it. Like make the decision and just fully commit. I think a lot of people I know are like, oh, should I have done that? And it's like, just commit to it. Like, even if it wasn't the right choice, just fully commit to it and go forward, and you'll understand at some point whether it was the fear or the intuition and things like that. So I love that you said start really, really easy. The exercise our master had us do is we have to walk through like the city, and like as you're walking through the city, you surrender to the moment. And when you surrender to the moment, the goal is to move around people and trusting which way they're going to go or how they're going to move. Instinctively, we actually know if someone's going to move more left or more right. So as you're navigating through these people, I would literally just flow, and you just notice this beautiful energy and movement. I'm just like, I can predict where people are going to turn. I'm like, this crazy, because I know instinctually which way I would go. But it's also your intuition saying, now just turn left, and then you turn left and this person goes that way, and you're like, cool. So that's like the more fun exercise. But during a pandemic, not as easy to do.
Yeah, I often do that when I'm driving. If I have time, like, what's the best what way to go home? Not only so it can be enjoyable, I can relax if I want to, but avoid traffic or stress or accidents. And I let the intuition come in and be like, take this route today, and it always turns out to be very pleasurable. So we talked a bit, we got through like your military stage a little bit. So tell me and you've mentioned what you've been doing for the last 10 years or so. So I would love to hear more details about what that is, because I don't actually know.
So when I got out of the military about 3 years ago. So while I was in, I started working on more like sound healing and guided meditations because of my voice. It was 10 years ago. I was studying psychology, and I was leading the class, and the teacher was like, everyone has to share their chapter. And I was like, can I like do a guided meditation? It was like my first group guided meditation. And I was like, everyone close your eyes, relax your body. And I just read what my chapter was about. And my teacher was like, that's the first time I've ever seen all the students in a classroom not talk and just be present. And she's like, you have a really powerful voice and aura. You should learn like some form of hypnotism or guided meditations. So I started to study more. And that was just my life for a while, was just guiding people through things. And a friend of mine was like, yeah, she's like, if you didn't notice, whenever you suggest something, people just do it. I was like, what? And she's like, go tell everyone in your phone right now, hey, we're going to blah, blah, blah tonight. And I did. I was like, left an audio thing. I'm like, hey, everyone, we're all going to go to this club. We're going to meet at 11:30. And everyone said yes. The next week, she asked other people to try to do the same thing, and nobody would just agree. People would be like, oh, I don't know about this. And I'm like, it's actually been that way most of my life. I would suggest things and people would just be like, sure. And I'm like, I never noticed that. So I was like, if I'm going to use this gift of supporting people, not like hypnotizing them, then I would like to use it to help them become the best versions of themselves. It wasn't until last year that I got into coaching, because I didn't like that word before. And then I realized that coaching was more about active listening and asking powerful questions. And when I realized that, I was like, now I can use this this voice, this aura, this energy to guide people and support them to grow even more. And again, it's helped me out by being able to translate the things I learned. Even last night, a big thing happened. We were on a call, and I try to be very inclusive. And I'm learning that a lot of people I've met in the LGBTQIA2S plus community don't like the word divine masculine, divine feminine. So I was like, cool, divine guided. I will say divine guided from now on. And they were like, what does that mean? I was like, for those of you that understand the divine feminine, it's a creation and flow. For those of you that understand divine masculine, it's a navigation and force. And I just went along with that, explaining it like that. And someone, I think, even asked another question. I was like, one of them is about presence, one of them is about the container. And as I went through that, I was like, we'll just say DG plus, divine guided plus. So it's masculine, feminine, or whatever else you want to call it. And afterwards, somebody was like, that's so good that you created that thing before. I haven't seen it. I'm like, that was channeled to me during the meeting. And I just rolled with it. I was like, let's use it. So that, again, is intuition.
Yes, and that divine connection, as you just mentioned too, and using them in combination so that, adapting right on the spot like that. I've only witnessed a few people like in a leadership type of a group setting where they've relied on their intuition in that way and their divine guidance, and they literally, instead of doing their PowerPoint presentation, they're in it in the moment and will stop for a minute and be like, all right, close their eyes and check in and then pivot, or, come out with something that they probably wouldn't have said before. And I'm fascinated by that. I love that. Such a beautiful place to lead from. So I'm so grateful for your willingness to be here and share everything that you did. I'm so grateful that you stayed true to yourself and did not let the rules of society or anyone's judgment take you away from who you are. And one of my intentions with these interviews and sharing them in the various ways that I will, and again, we are live on Clubhouse right now, but this is being recorded. It will be on my podcast, The Bridge to Infinity. It will be on my YouTube channel under the same name. And I really just want to open up this communication, this connection, so that these conversations, people know these conversations are available to them, that there are people that are willing to have these conversations with them. There are communities where this is very much welcomed, and I feel is very much needed. So I'm also, my intention is to encourage people to embrace who they are, no matter how strange, weird, or wonderful they think they are or aren't. So I'm very grateful for you for being so open and taking the time to share with me.
Thank you. I just want to let everyone know, I've been over 140 countries, and you will find people that will understand you in every country. You just have to allow yourself to be yourself and trust your intuition. If intuition says, go into this coffee shop and order a water, just trust your intuition, because the person giving you the water may be just like you, but you wouldn't know if you don't allow yourself to be open to finding them in your everyday world. I feel like some people have this mindset that I'm only going to find spiritual people in a spiritual community, and there's tons of people like that. You just have to trust your intuition.
Yeah, and I know I'm breaking this pattern, but for many years of my life, I was always stuck on the how. So, like, oh, this is my intention to find friends that I can talk to this about or have this community. How do I do that? And then everything would shut down because I'd go into my intellectual headspace being, well, I don't know how to do that. So, then it would just come, it would not be aligned. I would not be manifesting or attracting that because my energy got completely shut off by me trying to figure out how. So I love that you said that no matter where you go and having the intention and trusting your intuition, I would agree with that. And so I also want, would you please share where people can find you?
Yeah, I'm on all social media platforms. If you just type in Khadaura, Khadaura, you'll find me everywhere, and I respond whenever I can. But I absolutely love just connecting and being of service to just remind people that you're not alone. You're not the only one, and you are going to be accepted in those communities when you allow yourself to find those spaces.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much.